Water is power. It always has been. And if you think the battles over water we see today are something new, think again. Long before modern cities and sprawling farms, ancient civilizations faced the same challenge. How to control this precious resource, how to harness it, and how to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. Because in the ancient world, water wasn't just about survival. It was about dominance. It was about politics. And the proof is etched into the earth itself, hidden in the ruins of long-lost aqueducts, canals, and reservoirs that once decided the fate of empires. Picture this, a vast desert kingdom where every drop of water was a weapon, a jungle city where rulers built secret channels to keep their people loyal. Or a mountain empire that crumbled when its water network failed. These aren't just stories, they're real, and they're waiting to be uncovered. Today, we're diving deep into 25 vanished water networks that reveal the politics of ancient thirst. These systems weren't just engineering marvels. They were tools of control, symbols of power, and sometimes the very reason civilizations rose or fell. From the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia to the misty highlands of the Andes, these forgotten networks tell a story of human ambition, cunning, and sometimes desperation. Why did these systems disappear? Was it war, climate change, or something more sinister? And what can their fate teach us about our own world, where water scarcity is becoming an ever-growing crisis? The answers are buried in the past, but they hold urgent lessons for our future. So let's pull back the curtain on these ancient marvels and discover how water shaped history in ways you've never imagined. Consider the Nile, the lifeblood of ancient Egypt. Pharaohs didn't just rule the land, they ruled the river. Every flood season, they claimed credit for the waters that nourished the fields, turning nature's cycle into a display of divine power. But the real control happened behind the scenes. Canals and irrigation ditches were carefully managed, ensuring water flowed first to loyal nobles and key regions. Opponents, their crops withered as channels mysteriously ran dry. This wasn't just farming, it was a hydraulic dictatorship where water rights meant life or death. Now cross the Mediterranean to Rome, where emperors used aqueducts like political billboards. These towering structures weren't merely functional, they were propaganda. Inscriptions boasted of leaders who brought water to the people, while underground, engineers built secret bypasses to divert flows to military outposts or elite villas. When Rome fell, invaders didn't just sack the city, they targeted the aqueducts first, knowing that cutting the water supply would collapse resistance faster than any army. But perhaps the most chilling example lies in the deserts of Petra. This rose-red city thrived by hoarding water in hidden cisterns, its rulers charging exorbitant fees to caravans desperate for a drink. When trade routes shifted, the water monopoly collapsed, and so did Petra's power. These stories share a grim lesson. Civilizations that weaponized water often sowed the seeds of their own destruction. The ruins remind us that no empire, no matter how ingenious, can survive when its lifeline becomes a tool of control rather than a shared necessity. Beneath the scorching sands of ancient Persia, an engineering miracle kept entire cities alive, not with towering monuments, but with hidden tunnels. The Kanat systems were masterpieces of survival, carved by hand through bedrock and desert to deliver mountain water across impossible distances. Picture workers digging vertical shafts every 20 meters, connecting them with gently sloping tunnels so precise that water flowed for miles purely by gravity. These weren't just ditches, they were mathematical wonders plotted with astrolabes to maintain the perfect gradient. One miscalculation, and the water would either stall or surge violently, collapsing the tunnel. The genius of the Kanats wasn't just their construction, but their politics. Persian rulers controlled these subterranean networks like puppet strings. Cities that rebelled found their Kanats mysteriously clogged or diverted, while loyal regions enjoyed uninterrupted flows. In the desert, water was currency, and the Kanats were the ultimate bargaining chip. Even Alexander the Great recognized their power. When he conquered Persia, his first act wasn't to seize the throne, but to appoint a water overseer to control the tunnels. Yet the Kanats' greatest strength became their downfall. Their locations were so closely guarded that when invaders like the Mongols arrived, they couldn't be repaired once destroyed. As knowledge of their layouts died with local engineers, deserts reclaimed oasis cities within decades. Today, remnants of these tunnels still trickle beneath modern Iran, a ghostly reminder of how easily civilization evaporates when water wisdom is lost. The Kanats teach us a haunting lesson. Technology alone isn't enough. Without the shared knowledge to sustain it, even the most brilliant systems turn to dust. Rome's aqueducts didn't just quench thirst, they built an empire. Imagine standing in the Roman Forum as pure mountain water gushed through marble fountains, a daily reminder that your emperor could bend nature itself to his will. These soaring arches were the ancient equivalent of a viral PR campaign. Every drop proclaimed, "Rome provides," but behind the spectacle lay brutal calculations. The first aqueducts deliberately bypassed poorer neighborhoods, while wealthy districts enjoyed private water connections. It wasn't until riots threatened that emperors expanded access, turning public baths into bribery tools. A clean, water-fed populace was a docile one. The real shock, these stone veins of the empire weren't destroyed by barbarians. They were abandoned by Romans themselves. As political chaos grew in the 4th century, maintenance crews stopped showing up. Mineral deposits choked the channels, earthquakes cracked the foundations, and no one bothered to repair them. By the time Goths sacked Rome in 410, most aqueducts had already been dry for decades. The invaders merely broke what Rome had already neglected, a warning for any society that takes its infrastructure for granted. Yet the most fascinating ruins aren't in Rome at all, but in its conquered territories. In Segovia, Spain, a 2,000-year-old aqueduct still stands, built not for locals but to supply occupying legions. Its perfect granite blocks carried a silent message. Roman engineering could outlast rebellions. And in Carthage, the aqueduct's destruction was no accident. After Rome razed the city, they rebuilt the water system first, literally drowning the past under new pipelines. Water wasn't just delivered in the empire, it was deployed. Modern engineers marvel at the precision of Roman gradients, but the true masterpiece was psychological. By making free water seem like imperial generosity rather than calculated control, Rome turned basic survival into theater. When Constantinople's emperors later copied the system, they added golden faucets because in the game of hydraulic politics, spectacle matters as much as substance. The aqueduct's slow death proves a chilling point. No amount of engineering genius lasts when the will to maintain it drains away. In the scorching heat of the Indian subcontinent, stepwells weren't just holes in the ground, they were inverted palaces. Imagine descending into the earth, past carved gods and goddesses, down a staircase that doubled as a sacred path, each step leading closer to the life-giving water below. These architectural marvels weren't merely practical, they were political theater. Kings and queens commissioned them as acts of devotion, but also as clever tools of control. Build a stepwell, and you didn't just secure water, you secured loyalty. Take Chand Bayori, one of the deepest stepwells in Rajasthan, with its 3,500 perfectly symmetrical steps. On the surface, it was a gift to the people, but look closer. The steps funneled visitors past intricate carvings of the ruling dynasty's triumphs, a constant reminder of who held the power to grant or deny access to water. During droughts, the wealthy could send servants to collect water at dawn, while others waited for scraps. The stepwell's design enforced hierarchy even as it quenched thirst. Yet these wells also became something unexpected, sanctuaries for the powerless. Women, often excluded from public spaces, gathered here to share stories and swap secrets. Travelers found shade and community in their depths. For a time, the stepwells balanced control with connection, but when empires fragmented and patronage dried up, so did the wells. Without royal funds for maintenance, silt clogged their chambers, and superstitions grew around their crumbling walls. Today, many lie forgotten, their stairs swallowed by vegetation. But their legacy lingers. In a land where water is still a battleground, the stepwells whisper a paradox, that the structures meant to divide people could also, briefly, bring them together. They remind us that water's power isn't just in its flow, but in who gets to stand in its path. In the blistering heart of the Sonoran Desert, where temperatures soar past 120 degrees, an ancient people performed what seemed impossible. They made the desert bloom. The Hohekam, whose name means those who have vanished, carved over 1,000 miles of canals through sun-baked earth, transforming Arizona's arid landscape into a patchwork of fertile fields. These weren't simple ditches. Some channels stretched 30 feet wide, engineered with precise slopes to keep water flowing for miles without a single pump. It was a hydraulic masterpiece built centuries before European settlers arrived, and it sustained a thriving culture for over 1,000 years. But dig deeper into those dry riverbeds, and you'll find cracks in the story. Archaeologists uncovering Hohekam villages have made unsettling discoveries: skeletons with blunt force trauma, settlements burned to the ground, and canals abruptly abandoned. The very system that fed this civilization may have also torn it apart. In a land where water meant survival, control over those canals meant power. Some researchers believe droughts triggered violent clashes between villages, while others point to evidence of centralized authority. Elite compounds built near key water junctions, their walls lined with imported shells and turquoise. Were these the homes of water priests or warlords? The clues grow eerier. Near modern-day Phoenix, one canal's path cut straight through an older village's gravesite, as if sending a message. In another area, a secondary channel was deliberately filled with rubble, possibly to starve a rival settlement. Yet for all the signs of conflict, there's also evidence of astonishing cooperation. Maintaining these canals would have required thousands of workers coordinating across generations, a feat impossible without shared rules and trust. So what changed? The answer might lie in the dirt itself. Soil samples reveal that as populations grew, the Hohekam pushed their system too far. Salt buildup from relentless irrigation poisoned the fields, while wood beams used to reinforce the canals show signs of frantic repairs. Then, around 1450, the rains stopped. The canals dried up, and within decades the Hohekam vanished, leaving behind only their intricate channels and a haunting question: did they fall to invaders or to the very system that once saved them? Their legacy whispers a warning across the centuries that even the most brilliant solutions can become traps when nature and human ambition collide. High above the Nazca Desert, the famous lines and animal figures etched into the earth capture the imagination, but the real story lies beneath the sand. While tourists crane their necks to see the geoglyphs from planes, archaeologists have uncovered something far more practical and far more revealing: a labyrinth of spiral staircase aqueducts twisting deep into the dry soil. These weren't just water sources, they were acts of defiance against a landscape that rarely saw rain. The puquios, as they're called, are engineering marvels. Picture a series of funnel-shaped holes descending in perfect coils, leading to underground channels that tapped into hidden groundwater. The design was brilliant. Wind entering the spirals created airflow, pushing water through the tunnels without pumps. But here's the mystery. The Nazca built these in one of the driest places on Earth, where rivers vanish into the sand after just a few miles. Why invest such effort here of all places? The answer may lie in what researchers found buried near the puquios, not tools or pottery, but weapons. Skeletons with arrow wounds, fortifications around key water sites, and evidence of controlled burns. This suggests the aqueducts weren't just survival tools, they were strategic assets. Whoever controlled the puquios controlled life itself. Then, around 600 AD, something shattered this system. Sediment cores reveal a sudden shift. Decades of drought, punctuated by violent floods that would have choked the delicate channels with debris. But climate alone doesn't explain the burnt granaries or the defensive walls hastily built around remaining water sources. It seems the Nazca's carefully balanced water-sharing system fractured under pressure, turning neighbors into rivals. The final clue: some puquios were deliberately sabotaged, their tunnels collapsed from the inside. This wasn't neglect, it was a calculated act, likely during conflict. The very technology that sustained the Nazca for centuries may have become their undoing when cooperation gave way to desperation. Their fate whispers a timeless warning. When water becomes a weapon, even the most ingenious systems can't save a society from itself. Deep in the Cambodian jungle, the ruins of Angkor whisper a warning written in water and stone. This wasn't just a city, it was a hydraulic empire, its power flowing through a network of canals, reservoirs, and moats so vast they're visible from space. At its peak, Angkor's system moved more water than modern Los Angeles, turning a monsoon-driven landscape into a controlled machine. But like all machines, it had a fatal flaw. It assumed the rains would never stop. The heart of this system was the West Barre, a reservoir stretching 5 miles long and 1.5 miles wide. Imagine an artificial lake so massive it could float an entire navy, built to store monsoon rains for the dry season. Temples perched on its edges like watchmen, their stairs descending into the water as if the gods themselves were blessing this liquid treasury. But the Barre wasn't just practical, it was political. Inscriptions boast of kings who captured the waters, turning unpredictable nature into a royal spectacle. When the reservoir filled, it wasn't just irrigation, it was theater, proof that the god-kings could command even the skies. Yet cracks in this watery empire began to show literally. Recent LiDAR scans reveal something shocking. The canals were built on sand, not bedrock, not clay, but unstable grains that shifted with every flood. Worse, the system's design funneled erosion straight into the channels. Over centuries, silt piled up like a ticking time bomb, while deforestation from Angkor's sprawl made floods more violent. The very engineering meant to control water was amplifying its chaos. Then came the droughts. Tree ring studies show the 1400s brought monsoons that failed year after year. The Barre evaporated, leaving cracked mud where lotus flowers once floated. But nature wasn't the only culprit. Digs near the canals uncover evidence of something darker. Elite neighborhoods show signs of hasty repairs while outer districts were left to crumble. A broken sluice gate here, a sabotaged canal lock there. It seems Angkor's water lords prioritized their own survival as the system failed, hoarding what little flow remained. The final blow came from an unexpected direction: religion. Angkor's rulers had tied their legitimacy to the water system's success. When the reservoirs dried, so did their divine authority. Rebellions erupted, not with armies storming palaces, but with farmers abandoning silt-choked fields. The last inscriptions don't speak of invasion, they mourn neglected canals and unpaid maintenance crews. Angkor didn't fall to outsiders, it withered from within, its rulers trapped by their own grandiose designs. Today, strangler figs twist through the ruins of pumping stations, their roots bursting apart stone pipelines. It's a fitting metaphor for this water empire's end, not with a bang, but with a slow, relentless unraveling. Angkor's legacy isn't just about the dangers of over-engineering, but the peril of believing any system, no matter how brilliant, can outsmart nature forever. The stones warn us, when you build an empire on water, you'd better be ready for the drought. Beneath the sun-bleached stones of Crete's legendary Knossos Palace, archaeologists uncovered something unexpected, not gold or weapons, but pipes. Terracotta channels snaking through walls, flush toilets with wooden seats, even a bathtub fitted into an aristocrat's quarters. The Minoans didn't just have plumbing, they perfected it over 3,500 years ago, turning their capital into a liquid fortress. But these pipes weren't just about luxury, they were a vulnerability. The system was ingenious. Rainwater collected on rooftops flowed through gravity-fed channels into cisterns, then through tapered pipes that accelerated the current to prevent clogs. Some tubes were so precisely angled they still drain water today. But look closer at the ruins and you'll find fractures that don't match earthquake damage, pipes shattered from the inside, their edges blackened by fire. Near the harbor, an entire aqueduct segment was deliberately filled with rubble, as if someone wanted to starve the palace of its most precious resource. This wasn't mere sabotage, it was strategic warfare. When the Mycenaeans invaded around 1450 BC, they didn't just burn buildings, they targeted the water network first. Tablets recovered from the ruins tell a chilling story. Scribes frantically recorded dwindling water reserves in the palace's final days, while nearby wells showed signs of poisoning. The invaders understood something modern armies still grapple with: cut the water, and resistance crumbles faster than any wall. Yet the real conflict might have started earlier. Frescoes in Knossos depict processions bearing water jugs as tribute, hinting that outlying settlements resented the palace's hydraulic monopoly. When drought struck around 1500 BC, isotope analysis of bones reveals the elite kept drinking fresh mountain spring water, while commoners made do with brackish wells. Resentment simmered, and when the Mycenaeans came, some Minoans may have seen them as liberators rather than conquerors. The labyrinth beneath Knossos, long thought to be a myth, takes on new meaning when you follow the pipes. Its twisting corridors mirror the water channels above, both designed to confuse, one to trap monsters, the other to guard against thieves. In the end, neither worked. The Minoans' greatest engineering achievement became their Achilles' heel, proving that no civilization, no matter how advanced, is safe when thirst turns to fury. Their legacy whispers across millennia: control the water and you control the kingdom, until the day the kingdom fights back. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro doesn't look like much at first, just a sunken rectangle of brick about 12 meters long and 7 meters wide. But step closer and you realize this isn't just a pool. It's a waterproof vault lined with bitumen so precise that not a single drop could escape. In a city where every other structure was practical granaries, workshops, tight grids of houses, this bath stands out like a temple. But was it sacred or something far more cunning? Archaeologists have debated for decades. The bath sits at the heart of the citadel, surrounded by what might have been priests' quarters. Its steps suggest ritual immersion, like the sacred tanks of later Hindu traditions. But here's the twist. Mohenjo-Daro's engineers didn't just build this bath, they integrated it into the city's water network. Channels fed it fresh water from the Indus, while drains carried overflow to public wells. This wasn't just a place to wash, it was a hydraulic battery storing water for droughts. Then the rivers betrayed them. Sediment cores show the Indus began shifting course around 1900 BC, its waters creeping eastward. As the city's main channel dwindled, the bath's purpose might have flipped from ritual center to emergency reservoir. Recent excavations reveal something startling. Layers of silt at the bottom, packed with charred grain and broken pottery. Not offerings, but signs of desperate adaptation. When the water vanished, did the bath become a last-ditch granary? The bricks tell another story. Some are stamped with symbols, not the usual merchant marks, but what look like water flow calculations. Others show where patterns suggesting they were pried up and reused, as if the bath was constantly being retrofitted. The most haunting clue, a skeleton found curled near the drain, its fingers clutching a clay tablet etched with a single word repeated over and over: thirst. Mohenjo-Daro's mastery of water was its pride until that mastery became a trap. The bath, once a symbol of control, ended up a monument to its limits. When the Indus finally abandoned the city for good, the last act wasn't invasion or revolt. It was silence. The bricks stayed perfect, the bitumen intact. The water just never came back. High in the Andes, where the air thins and the stars feel close enough to touch, the Tuanaku carved gateways that didn't lead anywhere, at least not to any place we'd recognize. These monolithic arches, some weighing over 10 tons, stand like sentinels in the Bolivian Altiplano, their surfaces etched with weeping gods and serpentine rivers. But the real mystery lies beneath them. Laser scans have revealed something astonishing: hidden channels that once funneled water in precise patterns, aligning with celestial events. This wasn't just plumbing, it was liquid astronomy. At the center of it all stood the Sun Gate, its archway framing not just the horizon, but an intricate network of canals that mirrored the Milky Way. During the solstice, water would rush through these channels, creating reflections that made the carving seem to ripple and move. The effect, a divine illusion, convincing worshippers that the gods themselves were stirring the waters. Archaeologists found altars nearby stained with traces of maize beer and fish scales, offerings to the rain deities. But here's the chilling part. While the Tuanaku obsessed over these sacred hydraulics, their practical reservoirs were crumbling. Excavations at the city's edges tell a different story. Silt-clogged irrigation ditches run parallel to perfectly maintained ritual channels. A granary near the temple district shows signs of hasty repairs, its walls patched with mismatched stones, while the ceremonial fountains nearby gleamed with fresh plaster. It's as if the elite were so focused on appeasing water gods, they forgot to water their crops. Then came the droughts. Ice cores from nearby glaciers reveal a catastrophic dry spell around 1000 AD. The lake shrank, the canals ran dry, and the Tuanaku's response, they doubled down on ritual. Digs uncovered mass graves near the Sun Gate, not war victims, but malnourished children buried with tiny clay vessels, as if in one last plea to the gods. The final inscriptions speak of a procession carrying empty jars to the shore, waiting for a rain that never came. Today, the gateways still stand, their channels bone dry. Local Aymara people whisper that on quiet nights, you can hear water rushing through them, the ghosts of a civilization that mistook devotion for infrastructure. The stones warn us, when you worship water instead of managing it, even the most sacred systems can't save you from thirst. Imagine a water system so perfectly designed that it survives earthquakes, outlives dynasties, and still irrigates over 600,000 hectares of farmland today. just as it did when workers first carved it into the Sichuan Basin 2,300 years ago. The Dujogyan irrigation system isn't just ancient infrastructure, it's a living philosophy etched into the landscape. While other civilizations built rigid dams and towering aqueducts, Chinese engineers chose a radical approach. They listened to the river. The genius of Dujogyan lies in what it doesn't have: no massive walls holding back the Min River, no brute force attempts to dominate nature. Instead, workers sculpted the water's natural flow with a series of elegant interventions. They split the river into channels using a long, wedge-shaped levee called the fish mouth, which effortlessly diverts 60% of the water to irrigate crops during dry seasons, while letting 40% continue downstream to prevent flooding. Further downstream, a spillway dubbed the Flying Sands uses the river's own currents to flush away sediment, keeping the system self-cleaning. It's hydrology as poetry, a dance between human need and natural law. But the real marvel isn't the engineering, it's the mindset. Unlike Rome's aqueducts or Angkor's barrays, Dujogyan wasn't built to glorify rulers. Inscriptions credit its creation to Lai Bing, a governor who famously declared, "The river's nature is to cut mountains and scour valleys." Instead of fighting that power, he harnessed it. Local folklore says Lai Bing sacrificed himself to the river, transforming into a water god who still guards the system, a myth that speaks volumes about the culture's reverence for balance. Modern scans reveal something astonishing. The fish mouth's angle shifts imperceptibly over centuries, adjusting to changes in the river's flow like a living organism. Recent droughts exposed ancient markers embedded in the riverbed stone carvings of fish that served as medieval water gauges, their tails vanishing beneath the surface when levels reached ideal depth. This wasn't just technology, it was a conversation with nature passed down through generations of water masters who fine-tuned the system by observing fish migrations and bird nesting patterns. Yet Dujogyan's survival wasn't guaranteed. During the Cultural Revolution, radicals nearly destroyed it, calling it a relic of feudal superstition. What saved it? Rice. Farmers whose ancestors had tended these fields for millennia refused to let bulldozers near the channels that fed their crops. Their rebellion wasn't violent, it was practical. They knew no modern pump could match 2 millennia of accumulated wisdom. Today, as concrete dams silting up worldwide and reservoirs evaporate under climate change, Dujogyan hums along, its waters still allocated by wooden tallies split in half, one piece kept by officials, the other by farmers, a 2,000-year-old blockchain ensuring fairness. The system's longevity whispers an urgent truth. Sustainability isn't about controlling nature, but cooperating with it. While empires rose and fell by hoarding water, Sichuan thrived by sharing, not just the resource, but the responsibility. Hidden beneath Petra's rose-red cliffs, a secret network of channels and cisterns turned one of the driest places on Earth into an oasis of power. The Nabateans didn't just survive the desert, they conquered it, using water as both currency and weapon. Their system was so precise that during rare downpours, floodwaters transformed from deadly threats into carefully harvested bounty, channeled through stone-carved gutters into hidden reservoirs. Walk through the Sik today and you'll see grooves along the canyon walls, not decorative carvings, but the remnants of ceramic pipes that once carried fresh spring water to every corner of the city. The true brilliance lay in what archaeologists call water diplomacy. Petra sat at the crossroads of incense trade routes, and the Nabateans charged exorbitant fees for caravans to refill their water skins. But dig deeper into the records, and you'll find something unexpected: receipts showing discounts for loyal traders and punitive rates for rivals. This wasn't just commerce, it was geopolitical leverage written in liquid. When Rome finally annexed Petra in 106 AD, they didn't destroy the water system, they copied it, sending engineers to document every tunnel and sluice gate. Yet within centuries, the knowledge vanished, the culprit, not invasion but indifference. As Roman trade routes bypassed Petra for sea lanes, maintenance crews stopped showing up. Silt choked the channels, earthquakes cracked the cisterns, and the desert reclaimed its water. The final blow came from something unexpected: religion. Byzantine Christians viewed the Nabateans' hydraulic deities as pagan heresy, smashing the shrines that once marked vital water stations. Without the ritual caretakers who'd maintained the system for generations, the practical knowledge dried up faster than the springs. Today, Bedouin guides point out weeping walls where moisture still seeps through ancient filtration beds, ghostly proof of technology too advanced for its time. Recent excavations uncovered a 2,000-year-old valve near the treasury, its bronze mechanism still perfectly calibrated. The real mystery isn't how it worked, but why it was abandoned. Perhaps the answer lies in a single clay tablet found in a ruined water temple, its inscription warning: "The desert always remembers what men forget." Petra's stones whisper a bitter lesson: no empire, no matter how brilliant, can outlast its own neglect. Long before Rome's aqueducts stretched across Italy, another civilization mastered water in ways that still baffle engineers today. The Etruscans, often overshadowed by their successors, carved a labyrinth of tunnels called Kuniculae, narrow passageways that snaked beneath the earth like veins, draining swamps, irrigating crops, and even supplying fresh water to entire cities. These weren't just ditches, they were feats of precision. Picture workers chiseling through bedrock by torchlight, their tunnels following gradients so exact that water flowed effortlessly for miles without pumps or artificial pressure. Some cuniculae were so well built they're still functional after 2.5 millennia. But here's the mystery: why did such an advanced system vanish from history? The answer lies in the shifting priorities of power. When Rome began its meteoric rise, it didn't just conquer Etruscan lands, it overwrote their way of life. The cuniculae were designed for a rural, decentralized world where small city-states managed their own water needs. Rome, with its hunger for grandeur, preferred monumental aqueducts that showcased imperial might. Underground tunnels didn't impress crowds, soaring arches did. Archaeologists have uncovered eerie evidence of this clash. Near Veii, an Etruscan city famously besieged by Rome, a cuniculous entrance was found deliberately collapsed, its stones scorched. Was this sabotage or merely neglect? Digs elsewhere reveal Roman engineers repurposing Etruscan tunnels as sewage drains, a symbolic demotion from life-giving channels to waste carriers. Even the word cuniculus itself, once a term of respect, became slang for rat hole in Latin. Yet the greatest irony lies beneath Rome itself. Recent ground-penetrating radar has detected Etruscan-style tunnels beneath the Forum, likely built by captured engineers. The very people who dismissed the cuniculae as primitive depended on their knowledge to drain the marshes where Rome's foundations would rise. The system didn't disappear, it was buried, both literally and culturally, its creators erased from the story. Today, farmers in rural Lazio still use ancient cuniculae to water their fields, unaware of the tunnel's origins. Meanwhile, historians puzzle over Etruscan inscriptions that describe water-sharing agreements between cities, treaties that suggest cooperation rather than competition. In a world where water wars rage, perhaps these forgotten tunnels hold more than just water. They carry a lesson about what we lose when we mistake visibility for progress, and when the thirst for power drowns out older, quieter wisdoms. Deep in the Guatemalan rainforest, where howler monkeys scream through the canopy, the ruins of Tikal tell a silent story, one written in stone reservoirs and cracked plaster. The Maya didn't just build temples here, they engineered an entire civilization atop a paradox. In a land with no rivers, where seasonal rains vanished into porous limestone, they turned their cities into giant water traps. Their reservoirs weren't just storage pits, they were inverted skyscrapers, some reaching 15 meters deep, lined with waterproof clay that still repels moisture after 12 centuries. Walk through Tikal's Grand Plaza today, and you're literally standing on an ancient water tank. Beneath your feet lies the Corriental Reservoir, capable of holding over 30 million gallons, enough to sustain 10,000 people through 18 months of drought. The engineering was brilliant. Plastered catchment slopes funneled every raindrop into these basins, while intricate filtration systems using zeolite minerals, a volcanic rock that purifies water, kept supplies drinkable. But the real secret wasn't the technology, it was the control. Scratched into the reservoir walls, archaeologists found glyphs marking water days, appointments for neighborhoods to collect their rations. Nearby, the bones of crocodiles and turtles surface from the silt, species deliberately introduced to keep the water clean by eating parasites. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was a hydraulic dictatorship. Rulers like the famed Jasorchan Kayawil didn't just claim descent from gods, they positioned their palaces atop the reservoirs, literally towering over the lifeblood of their people. Then, around 900 AD, the system snapped. Sediment cores from lakebeds reveal a decades-long mega-drought, but pollen samples tell a darker tale. As water levels dropped, the elite reservoirs stayed deep, while outlying neighborhoods show signs of desperate digging shallow, unlined pits that would have bred disease. At Karakol, a rival city, archaeologists uncovered mass graves near empty cisterns, skeletons with telltale grooves on their teeth from chewing leather during famine. The final act played out in the art. Late-era murals at Calakmul depict warriors not with spears, but with broken water jars. Inscriptions at Tikal's last-ditch reservoir, Temple Roman III, boast of a king who opened the waters, likely a violent seizure of remaining supplies. The collapse wasn't sudden. It was a slow strangulation, neighborhood by neighborhood, as trust evaporated faster than the reservoirs. Now, the jungle has reclaimed these cisterns, their steep walls home to orchids and venomous snakes. But if you listen closely during a downpour, you can hear ancient echoes, water rushing through long collapsed channels, a ghostly reminder that no civilization, no matter how brilliant, is immune to thirst. The Maya's legacy isn't just a warning about climate change, it's a lesson in how quickly cooperation turns to conflict when the wells run dry. The Assyrians didn't just conquer cities, they drowned them. Inscriptions from Nineveh boast of kings who turned rivers like snakes to strangle rebellious lands, diverting entire waterways to parch enemies into surrender. One cuneiform tablet describes how Sennacherib besieged Babylon not with soldiers, but with engineers, rerouting the Euphrates until the city's moats turned to cracked earth. It was psychological warfare, surrender or watch your children drink dust. Yet these hydraulic feats hid a fatal arrogance. Recent excavations along the Minoan Canal, once the empire's lifeline, reveal layers of silt thicker than expected, some sections completely filled within decades. The Assyrians' own tablets hint at the problem. Frantic memos between officials complaining of bitter water clogging channels and orders to conscript thousands to dredge them. The very systems built to dominate others were choking themselves. The irony cuts deeper. At Nimrud, archaeologists found a dam designed to starve a rebellious town, only to discover it had accidentally silted up the Assyrians' own upstream farms first. A scribe's letter to the king pleads for grain shipments, revealing the miscalculation. The fields thirst, yet the dam holds strong. Their weapon had turned against them. But the most haunting evidence comes from Nineveh's fall in 612 BC. When Babylonian and Median armies breached the walls, they didn't just burn palaces, they targeted the waterworks. A recently deciphered clay cylinder gloats, "We broke the sluices like bones, and the great city drank mud." The invaders knew the truth. The Assyrian Empire wasn't defeated by swords, but by its own hubris. The canals built to ensure eternal dominance had become its Achilles heel. Today, the Narwan's remnants whisper a warning. Satellite images show its ghostly path, once a blue vein on the landscape, now just a faint scar in the soil. The tablets had it right all along. Power flows with the water, and when the current shifts, even kings kneel to thirst. In the blistering sands of Oman, where temperatures soar past 120 degrees, survival hinges on one ancient word, a flage. These ingenious channels don't just carry water, they carry an entire philosophy of fairness, etched into the desert stone over 3,000 years. Unlike the top-down systems of Rome or Angkor, where water flowed at the whim of rulers, the flage operate on a principle so radical it feels modern: shared ownership. Every drop is measured, timed, and distributed according to strict rotations, with families receiving water based on the size of their land, not the weight of their purse. Walk through an Armani village today, and you'll hear the murmurs of history in the falage's flow. The channels snake from mountain springs to date palm groves, their paths so precisely graded that water moves without pumps, guided solely by gravity. But the real magic lies in the math. At each fork, a sundial-like device called a Kanat splits the flow into timed shares, some as brief as 15 minutes, ensuring no farm goes thirsty. Archaeologists have uncovered ceramic tokens from the Iron Age, each marked with a family's water schedule, proving this system's roots run deep. What kept the flage alive while other water networks crumbled? The answer is carved into the cliffs above the channels. Here, stone tablets list centuries of rulings by village councils, resolving disputes over everything from stolen irrigation time to damaged conduits. Unlike imperial decrees, these decisions were made collectively, with elders and farmers debating under the shade of a communal meeting tree. When drought struck, the entire community voted to adjust shares, prioritizing survival over privilege. The system's resilience was tested in the 1970s when modern wells threatened to eclipse the flage, but something unexpected happened. Villagers rebelled not with weapons but with wrenches. They sabotaged government pumps, arguing that deep drilling would drain the shared aquifers. Their protest worked. Oman now protects the flage as UNESCO heritage, recognizing that this isn't just infrastructure, it's a covenant between people and place. The final clue to their endurance might lie in the water itself. Samples from flage channels contain traces of silver ions, a natural antibiotic from the mountain rocks. For centuries, this self-purifying system delivered clean water without filters or chemicals. But the true purification was social. By tying survival to cooperation, the flage taught generations that water isn't just a resource, it's a relationship. As one village elder told researchers, the channel remembers what the politician forgets. Today, as satellite images show ancient flage lines still feeding green ribbons across the desert, they offer a quiet challenge to our age of scarcity. Not every water war was fought with swords. Some were won with sundials and shared sacrifice. Carthage's downfall wasn't written in blood, it was written in salt. For 3 years, Rome's legions had battered the city's walls, only to be repelled again and again by defenders who turned every street into a kill zone. Then, in 146 BC, the Romans tried something darker. Historians like Appian describe how siege engines lobbed not stones, but rotting carcasses into Carthage's reservoirs, fouling the water with disease. But recent excavations reveal an even more chilling tactic: salt. Divers exploring the sunken ruins of Carthage cisterns found something peculiar: layers of crystallized sodium clinging to the walls, far thicker than normal seawater infiltration. Chemical analysis matched it to nearby salt flats, suggesting a deliberate contamination. Imagine the horror as Carthaginians lifted their cups to parched lips, only to gag on brine. Thirst became torture. The very tanks that had sustained the city through previous sieges now turned against it, their contents undrinkable, yet the betrayal ran deeper. Among the rubble, archaeologists uncovered bronze pipes with solder marks, evidence of hasty repairs. Here's the twist: the metalwork matches Roman, not Carthaginian, styles. It seems defectors or captured engineers may have helped sabotage the system from within. A fragmentary scroll found near the harbor curses the silver-tongued traitor who sold the water, hinting at a conspiracy lost to time. The final irony: Carthage's legendary Admiral Hannibal had once planned to starve Rome by diverting the Tiber. Now, generations later, his homeland perished the same way. As excavations continue, the cisterns yield grim clues: skeletons curled around empty jars, their bones showing signs of renal failure from extreme dehydration. The last defenders didn't die fighting. They died begging for a drop of clean water. Today, seawater laps at these ruined reservoirs, their once precise brickwork now home to octopuses and bioluminescent algae. But if you scoop up a handful of that water and taste it, the salt still burns, a ghostly echo of history's first known act of hydraulic warfare. Carthage's lesson is as clear as it is cruel. When empires go to war over water, the real casualty is always the truth. The sprawling ruins of Chan Chan still whisper their warning under the Peruvian sun: 9 square miles of crumbling adobe that once formed the largest pre-Columbian city in the Americas. But look past the geometric friezes of fish and seabirds, and you'll see the real masterpiece: a skeletal network of canals threading through the dust. The Chimu didn't just build a city here, they built a liquid machine, turning one of the driest coasts on Earth into a fertile paradise. Their secret: capturing fog. While other civilizations relied on rivers or rains, the Chimu engineered something extraordinary: canals that siphoned moisture from coastal mists, channeling droplets into reservoirs lined with crushed shells to prevent seepage. Walk through the ruins today, and you can still trace their logic: main arteries branching into smaller channels, each calibrated to deliver just enough water to orchards of pake and sweet potatoes. The system was so precise that archaeologists found ceramic valves designed to adjust flow by the hour, like an ancient irrigation clock, but the canals held a darker purpose. Excavations at the Tishudi Palace reveal a throne room positioned directly above a major water junction, its floor grates allowing rulers to literally hear the flow beneath their feet. Glyphs on nearby walls depict officials measuring water with knotted cords, early quotas determining which neighborhoods thrived and which withered. This wasn't just engineering, it was hydraulic theater, with kings playing deities who opened the veins of the earth. Then came the floods. Sediment cores from the Moch Valley tell a catastrophic story. Around 1470 AD, an El Niño event unlike any other slammed the coast. Normally dry riverbeds became torrents, and the Chimu's delicate fog capture canals were no match for the deluge. Adobe walls melted like sugar, while silt clogged reservoirs beyond repair. But the disaster wasn't purely natural. Recent LiDAR scans show something disturbing: the Chimu had diverted a river to expand their system shortly before the floods, destabilizing the watershed. Their own ambition may have amplified nature's wrath. The final irony lies in the ruins themselves. As the Inca closed in for conquest, they found a city already crippled, not by siege but by thirst. Abandoned canals show signs of frantic repairs with mismatched bricks and hastily dug trenches. One skeleton was found clutching a digging stick near a collapsed channel, its fingers worn to the bone. The Chimu's last act wasn't defiance but desperation, a civilization that mastered water only to drown in its own hubris. Now, as modern El Niños grow fiercer, Chan Chan's ghosts offer a sobering lesson. The same mists that once fed the canals still roll in from the Pacific, condensing on ancient walls like tears. The difference, today's engineers are listening. Restoration teams have rebuilt sections using traditional materials, noting how the Chimu's shell-lined channels resist erosion better than concrete. Sometimes the old ways hold answers we're only now learning to hear. At first glance, the pyramids of Giza seem to rise from the desert like timeless monuments to permanence built to defy the very concept of erosion. But what if these colossal structures weren't just tombs or temples, but part of an elaborate waterworks system designed to harness the Nile's power? Recent radar scans have revealed something startling: a web of underground channels beneath the plateau, their paths eerily aligned with the pyramid's cardinal orientations. These aren't natural formations. The walls show tool marks, and sediment layers contain traces of aquatic plants that couldn't have grown in arid sand. Take a closer look at the so-called air shafts inside the Great Pyramid. For decades, Egyptologists assumed these narrow passages served a spiritual purpose, ventilating the afterlife, perhaps. But robotic probes have detected mineral deposits consistent with long evaporated water flow. Even more telling, the shafts angle downward at precise gradients, matching ancient irrigation techniques found along the Nile. Could these have been conduits not for air but for liquid? The theory gains traction when you examine the ruins around the Sphinx. Its weathered limestone body bears deep vertical grooves, classic signs of water erosion. Yet geological studies confirm the last time this region saw significant rainfall was over 7,000 years ago, long before conventional dating places the Sphinx's construction. Unless, of course, the monument spent centuries submerged or regularly splashed by artificial waterworks. Nearby, archaeologists have uncovered a massive stone basin, its sides carved with flood gauges and sluice markings. Was this part of a hydraulic control system? Then there's the matter of the missing records. While later dynasties left meticulous accounts of grain taxes and military campaigns, not a single papyrus describes the pyramid's construction methods. The few surviving documents referencing Giza, like the inventory stela, mention waterways and the sacred lakes of Khufu. Mainstream scholars dismiss these as myths, but fringe researchers point to an unsettling pattern. During the Fourth Dynasty's collapse, statues of water deities were systematically defaced, and hydraulics-related hieroglyphs were chiseled away from temple walls. Was this religious upheaval, or a deliberate purge of hydraulic knowledge? The most compelling evidence might lie in the pyramid's very placement. Satellite imaging shows the three main pyramids align not just with Orion's belt, but with dry riverbeds that once branched from the Nile. Climate data confirms these waterways flowed year-round during the Old Kingdom. Picture this: an engineered network where floodwaters were diverted through channels beneath the pyramids, their weight and shape creating hydraulic pressure to lift water to distant farmlands. The structures wouldn't just symbolize power they'd generated, so why was this erased? Follow the political shifts. When the capital moved south to Thebes, the new rulers had no use for a northern water cult. Droughts turned the Nile's old channels to dust, making the system obsolete. Within generations, the pyramid's original purpose faded into myth. Perhaps the greatest irony is that modern engineers are now rediscovering these principles. The Aswan High Dam, just upriver, uses the same fundamental idea controlling water flow to sustain a civilization. The ancients may have left us not just a riddle, but a blueprint. The sands of Giza still whisper their secrets. On certain mornings, when the Nile's humidity meets the desert's chill, mist rises around the pyramid's bases like ghostly water. It's a fleeting illusion, or maybe a memory etched in stone and waiting to be read. Constantinople's aqueducts weren't just pipes, they were the empire's pulse. For nearly 1,000 years, these towering arches carried mountain springs into the heart of Byzantium, filling public baths, imperial palaces, and the cavernous cisterns hidden beneath the city's streets. But in the year 626, that pulse faltered. Persian armies, allied with the Avars, did what no enemy had dared. They severed the aqueducts at their source, leaving the greatest city on earth to choke on dust. The Valens Aqueduct, the city's crown jewel, tells the story in its scars. Built in the 4th century, its double-tiered arches stretched over 400 miles, a feat so advanced that modern engineers still marvel at its precision. But when attackers targeted the system's weakest point, the vulnerable channels outside the walls, they didn't just break stone, they broke a psychological contract. For centuries, Byzantine emperors had presented free water as divine right, their likenesses carved into fountain spouts as if they personally poured every cup. Now, as reservoirs ran dry, that illusion evaporated. Archaeologists digging near the ancient aqueduct routes have found eerie evidence of the siege aftermath. In the basilica cistern, sediment layers show a sudden shift. Clean mineral deposits give way to layers of ash and charred wood, proof that desperate citizens burned anything to distill filthy runoff. Worse, skeletal remains near dry fountains show signs of hydrocephalus, a condition caused by drinking contaminated water. The aqueduct's destruction didn't just cause thirst, it bred disease. Yet the real tragedy wasn't the attack itself, but the failure to adapt. Byzantine archives reveal a bitter irony. Engineers had drafted plans for secondary water tunnels, but construction stalled because the church deemed the project too costly. When the Persians struck, those half-dug passages became mass graves, their muddy floors preserving sandals and tools where workers had fled mid-dig. The empire's bureaucratic inertia proved deadlier than any siege engine. The siege's end brought no relief. Though Emperor Heraclius eventually repelled the invaders, the aqueducts took decades to restore, a time the city didn't have. Trade routes withered as merchants avoided the parched capital, and the army, once quartered near sprawling bathhouses, disbanded when dysentery ravaged the ranks. Constantinople never fully recovered its hydraulic glory. Later emperors plastered over the cracks with quick fixes, imported water barrels, rainwater collectors, but the damage was done. The aqueduct's fall hadn't just weakened the city, it had shattered the myth of Byzantine invincibility. Today, tourists admire the Valens Aqueduct's surviving arches without realizing they're staring at a monument to fragility. The stones still bear chisel marks from hasty repairs, their uneven patches telling a story of decline. But the lesson isn't just about vulnerability, it's about priorities. Constantinople's leaders assumed their water system was unbreakable until the day it wasn't. In our age of crumbling infrastructure, those dry channels whisper a warning. Civilizations aren't felled by the blows they expect, but by the ones they refuse to see coming. Diving into the cenotes of the Yucatan is like plunging into the Maya underworld itself. These gaping sinkholes, their walls draped with vines and roots, plunge hundreds of feet into darkness. But these weren't just natural wonders, they were the beating heart of Maya survival. In a land with no rivers, where rainwater vanished into porous limestone almost instantly, cenotes were the only reliable water source for millions. Their crystal-clear depths held life, death, and something far more haunting, the unraveling of a civilization. The sacredness of cenotes wasn't just myth. At Chichen Itza, the great well of sacrifice still echoes with whispers of rituals, golden artifacts, and human remains pulled from its depths speak of offerings to Chok, the rain god. But here's the twist. While priests performed ceremonies above, engineers worked below. Recent sonar scans reveal something astonishing: tunnels carved into cenote walls, connecting them into a hidden network. These weren't just spiritual sites, they were part of a hydraulic system, a secret web of reservoirs ensuring water reached the city even in drought. Yet the cenotes also tell a darker story. Sediment cores from their bottoms show layers of desperation. Around 900 AD, as mega droughts grip the region, the usual layers of pollen and fish bones give way to something else, silt mixed with charcoal. Villagers had begun burning forests, hoping the ash would coax rain from the skies. Then come the skeletal remains, not the clean bones of ritual sacrifices, but jumbled piles, some showing knife marks where flesh was stripped. Cannibalism, famine-induced violence, the cenotes won't say. The cruelest irony lies in the geology. While the Maya starved, the cenotes themselves never ran dry. Their waters, fed by underground rivers, remained pristine, but access was controlled. Elite districts had staircases carved straight to the water's edge, while outlying villages show signs of makeshift wells dug perilously close to collapse. A glyph at Uxmal depicts a king standing atop a cenote, a rope dangling into its depths not to draw water, but to lower a guard who would police its use. Today, tourists swim in these same pools, unaware that their laughter echoes over ancient tragedies. Divers still find pottery shards deep in submerged caves, some etched with pleas to the gods, others with tallies of water rations. The cenote's final lesson isn't about drought, it's about division. When the rains failed, the Maya didn't just battle nature, they battled each other, turning sacred wells into fortresses. The water never left, the trust did. The stone towers of Great Zimbabwe rise from the savannah like a mirage, 11,000 tons of rock stacked without mortar, their curves mirroring the distant hills. But the real power of this kingdom wasn't in its walls. It was hidden underground, in a labyrinth of wells that turned water into gold. While Europe was mired in the Dark Ages, Zimbabwe's rulers built an empire on a simple equation: no one moves gold without drinking first. Every major trade route to the coast crossed their territory, and at each strategic stop they sank deep shafts into the earth. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were liquid toll booths. Archaeologists have found Persian glass beads and Chinese porcelain near the wells, proof that merchants paid dearly for access. But the real currency was control. Inscriptions at Kami ruins describe a water tax collected in gold dust, while skeletal remains show signs of violent trauma near disputed sources. The message was clear: cross the king's wells and you'll pay with more than coin. Yet the system's brilliance was also its fragility. Core samples from the Dictatorship reservoir reveal a shocking truth. The water table began dropping decades before the kingdom's collapse. Tree rings tell of worsening droughts, but pollen analysis adds a damning detail. As the climate dried, Zimbabwe's elites doubled down on water-intensive crops like sorghum to feed their armies. They were literally drinking their future. The final clue lies in the wells themselves. At the height of the crisis, workers dug deeper, shoring up shafts with precious hardwood. Then, abruptly, the repairs stop. The last layers contain no timber, just crudely stacked stones, a desperate scramble for the last drops. Nearby, archaeologists uncovered a sealed chamber with a grim inventory, empty water jars beside piles of untouched gold. It's a haunting metaphor for the kingdom's end. They died rich, but they died thirsty. Today, the wind whistles through empty granaries where maize once overflowed, and the wells stand dry under the African sun. But their stones still bear the grooves of countless ropes, grooves worn smooth by generations who believed water, like gold, was something to hoard rather than share. Zimbabwe's ruins whisper a warning older than its walls. When the last well runs dry, not even a mountain of gold can buy it back. The Norse settlers who landed on Greenland's icy shores didn't just bring their longships and woolen cloaks, they brought an unshakable belief in their own ways. Even in a land where glaciers loomed like frozen gods, they insisted on building as if they were still in Scandinavia. Wooden churches, turf-roofed longhouses, and most fatally, rainwater collectors designed for the drizzly skies of home. These weren't just practical structures, they were declarations of identity. The colonists could have learned from the Inuit, who'd thrived in the Arctic for centuries by harvesting meltwater and sealing ice. But pride, it seems, was thicker than glacier ice. Digging into the ruins of Brattahlid, the largest Norse settlement, archaeologists uncovered a network of stone-lined channels leading to massive cisterns. The design was ingenious for a wetter climate. In Greenland's fleeting summers, the collectors worked beautifully, filling reserves for the winter. But when the Little Ice Age gripped the North Atlantic in the 13th century, summers grew shorter and rains scarcer. Ice cores from nearby glaciers tell the grim story, layers of dust marking years when snow never melted, and the Norse reservoirs lay empty. Yet the settlers kept rebuilding their systems, doubling down on a failing strategy. The contrast with the Inuit was stark. While Norse leaders scratched desperate runes about barren skies, their indigenous neighbors adapted. Inuit hunters taught archaeologists how they'd chip ice from bergs, knowing salt water froze out impurities, leaving fresh cores when melted. They built snow traps to condense fog into drinkable droplets, techniques the Norse dismissed as heathen tricks. Skeletons from Norse graves reveal the cost of that arrogance, shrunken bone cavities from chronic dehydration, while Inuit burial sites from the same period show no such sign. The final insult came not from the cold, but from the colonists' own hands. At a farmstead called Gardar, researchers found a smashed rainwater gutter beside an intact Inuit-style ice cellar. The message was clear: someone had rejected the old ways too late. By the time the last Norse Greenlander vanished in the 15th century, their settlements stood as eerie time capsules, frozen meals still on tables, empty water jugs by bedsides. The ice preserved their tragedy perfectly, a people who starved of thirst not because they lacked water, but because they refused to see it in new forms. Today, as Greenland's glaciers retreat at alarming speeds, the lesson echoes across centuries. Climate change doesn't just test our resources, it tests our willingness to learn. The Norse didn't fail because they were weak, they failed because they were stubborn. Their ruins whisper a warning as clear as meltwater. Survival isn't about who's right, but who's willing to change. Beneath the towering temples of Angkor, another world lies hidden, a labyrinth of underground rivers engineered by the Khmer to defy the monsoons. While Angkor's reservoirs captured the world's attention, its lesser-known subterranean grid was the true marvel, a network of stone-lined channels funneling water beneath palaces and plazas. Picture this: during the rainy season, floodwaters that would have drowned the city were tamed, diverted through these secret tunnels to replenish distant rice fields. In the dry months, the same channels reversed flow, drawing groundwater back to the surface like a hydraulic lung. This wasn't just plumbing, it was liquid alchemy. Recent LiDAR scans reveal the system's staggering scale: thousands of miles of tunnels crisscrossing the jungle floor, some wide enough to float a small boat. At Samba Pre Kuk, a pre-Angkorian site, archaeologists found sluice gates made of fitted laterite blocks, their edges worn smooth by centuries of use. The design was ingenious. By burying the waterways, the Khmer prevented evaporation under the tropical sun, while the Earth's natural insulation kept the water cool and clean. But the real surprise came when researchers traced the tunnel's paths. They didn't just follow topography. They formed precise geometric patterns, aligning with temple constellations and solstice points. Water wasn't just managed here, it was worshipped. Then, the silence, unlike Angkor's reservoirs, which left behind inscriptions boasting of royal hydraulics, the underground system vanished from records after the 14th century. The jungle swallowed the entrance shafts and the tunnels filled with silt. Why? The answer may lie in a single artifact, a broken terracotta pipe unearthed near Koh Ker, its interior caked with a strange black residue. Chemical analysis identified the substance as concentrated tannins, the same acids found in rotting leaves. It seems the Khmer's greatest strength became their undoing. As the empire expanded, deforestation for rice fields destabilized the watershed. Without tree roots to hold the soil, monsoon rains washed sediment into the tunnels faster than crews could clear them. A royal decree from the reign of Jayavarman VII laments the choked veins of the earth, ordering peasants to dig new channels, but the solution only accelerated the crisis. The more they dug, the more erosion worsened. By the time the Siamese invaded, the underground grid was already a tomb, its chambers packed with mud, its logic forgotten. Today, villagers near Phnom Kulen whisper of spirits guarding hidden waterways. They're not wrong. During droughts, certain patches of jungle stay improbably green, hinting at moisture trapped below. In 2019, a farmer plowing a field stumbled into a collapsed tunnel, its walls still slick with condensation after 600 years. The Khmer's legacy isn't lost, it's waiting, buried under roots and regret. Their mistake wasn't engineering, but scale. They mastered water's flow, but never learned to read the forest's warning. Dig too deep, and the earth drinks back. Beneath the towering pyramids of Teotihuacan, where tourists now marvel at the Avenue of the Dead, an invisible network once pulsed with life, not blood, but water. This ancient metropolis didn't just honor gods of rain and fertility. It deified the very drains that carried away its waste. Murals unearthed in the city's ruins show something unexpected. Towering figures with gaping mouths, their bodies morphing into canals, their outstretched arms becoming stone channels. These weren't just artistic motifs, they were worship. The genius of Teotihuacan's drainage system lay in its duality. While Rome's aqueducts flaunted imperial power, these hidden channels served a subtler purpose. Engineered with volcanic rock and waterproof stucco, they snaked beneath temples and plazas, funneling stormwater into agricultural fields while preventing catastrophic floods. But here's the twist: the system's maintenance wasn't left to engineers alone. Priests performed rituals at key junctions, offering copal incense and jade beads to the drainage gods, deities like Tilalok's lesser-known cousin, Chalchutlaku Ixquitl, depicted in murals with her skirt swirling into a whirlpool. Faith and infrastructure were inseparable. Then came the cracks, both literal and spiritual. Sediment cores from the city's reservoirs reveal a disturbing timeline. As droughts worsened around 550 AD, the layers show increasing silt mixed with charred maize, evidence of failed crops and desperate burning rituals. Meanwhile, murals near the Temple of the Feathered Serpent take a darker turn. The once benevolent drainage gods now snarl, their channel arms choked with rubble. One haunting fresco shows a deity weeping black tears, its mouth clogged with fish bones. Archaeologists digging near the San Juan River uncovered the system's fatal flaw. The very priests who blessed the drains had also politicized them. Elite compounds had meticulously maintained channels, while outlying neighborhoods suffered with crumbling infrastructure. Skeletal remains from these poorer areas show higher rates of waterborne parasites, while inscriptions boast of rulers cleansing the sacred flows during ceremonies. The message was clear: holiness came with plumbing privileges. The final act played out in the tunnels themselves. Near the Pyramid of the Moon, researchers found a blocked drain filled with shattered pottery, not accidental debris but deliberate sabotage. The shards matched vessels used in rituals, suggesting a revolt against both the priests and the gods they served. When Teotihuacan collapsed around 650 AD, it wasn't invaders that toppled the city, but a crisis of faith. The people stopped believing their deities could control the waters, and without that belief, why maintain the system at all? Today, when rains lash the ruins, modern drainage grates struggle to handle the flow, while the ancient channels beneath lie silent. Yet on quiet nights, caretakers swear they hear echoes of rushing water where none exists. Perhaps it's the wind, or perhaps the ghosts of a civilization that learned too late. When you mix divinity with drainage, the gods always have the last drop. Venice didn't just rise from the water, it defied it. While other civilizations fought to control rivers or hoard rainwater, this floating city turned the tides themselves into allies. The Venetian lagoon, a shallow brackish basin, should have been uninhabitable. Yet for over 1,500 years, its canals have whispered secrets of survival that drowned empires never learned. The difference: adaptation. Where others built walls against the sea, Venice built flexibility into its very foundations. Take a closer look at those iconic palazzos. Their marble facades may gleam, but the real genius lies beneath. Wooden pilings, millions of them, were driven deep into the lagoon's soft sediment, not to resist the water, but to move with it. Unlike stone foundations that crack under shifting tides, these timber supports flex like living roots. Even more startling, the wood petrifies over centuries, transforming into stone-like resilience without losing its give. It's a lesson the builders of Atlantis myths missed. Sometimes survival means bending, but Venice's mastery wasn't just in construction, it was in governance. The Republic's earliest laws weren't about trade or war, but sediment. A 13th century decree required every ship entering the lagoon to deliver a quota of stones to reinforce barrier islands. The system functioned like a maritime tax, turning Venice's bustling trade into its own defense against erosion. Meanwhile, a council of water magistrates held veto power over any construction that might alter currents. Their meeting notes, preserved in the state archives, reveal meticulous debates over canal widths and dredging schedules. To them, hydrology wasn't engineering, it was statecraft. Yet the lagoon's true safeguard was its salt marshes. These sprawling wetlands acted as natural sponges, absorbing storm surges and filtering pollutants. For centuries, Venetians protected them fiercely, even as land-hungry developers clamored for reclamation. Then came the 20th century. Industrial ports needed space, and the marshes were drained. The consequences were immediate. Without the wetlands to buffer waves, erosion accelerated. Floods grew more violent, the infamous Aqua Alta that now submerges St. Mark's Square wasn't a medieval curse, it was a modern mistake, echoing the hubris of lost civilizations that paved over their natural defenses. Today, as most controversial flood barriers rise from the waves, history watches with grim irony. The system's steel gates are technological marvels, yet they embody the old Roman mindset Venice once rejected: domination over adaptation. Meanwhile, the last remaining marshes quietly disappear, their roots choked by plastic and neglect. The gondolier's songs still carry centuries of hydraulic wisdom, but the real question lingers in the brackish air. Will Venice remember its own lessons before it's too late? The lagoon's waters hold a mirror to our era, one where short-term solutions so often drown out long-term survival. The stones of Venice whisper a truth as urgent as the rising tide. Civilizations don't fail when they face crises, but when they forget how they last survived them. The ghosts of ancient water networks whisper urgent lessons to our modern world, lessons written in silt and stone, in the ruins of civilizations that either mastered water or were mastered by it. Take Persia's Canats, those underground rivers carved by hand. They thrived not just because of their engineering, but because of their governance. Villages maintained them through shared labor and collective knowledge, understanding that water belonged to everyone. Contrast that with the Maya, whose rulers hoarded cenotes like treasure vaults, turning life-giving wells into tools of control. When drought came, their people didn't unite, they fractured. The difference: one system saw water as a covenant, the other a weapon. Today, as reservoirs shrink and aquifers drain, we're replaying these ancient dramas with alarming precision. Look at California's Central Valley, where overpumping has caused the ground to sink nearly 30 feet in places, a modern echo of the Hohekam's collapsing canals. Or consider Cape Town's Day Zero crisis, when the city came within weeks of turning off its taps, mirroring the Byzantine elite who prioritized palace fountains over public wells until it was too late. The parallels aren't coincidental, they're cyclical, yet hope flows from places like Oman, where the Aflaj system still distributes water by sundial and consensus after 3,000 years. Or China's Dujogyan, where farmers and engineers collaborate with the river rather than against it, just as their ancestors did in 200 BC. These aren't relics, they're roadmaps. They prove sustainability isn't about technology alone, but about values. The Khmer's underground channels failed when they prioritized temple grandeur over forest preservation. Venice survived because its laws treated the lagoon as a living entity, not a commodity. The choice before us is stark but simple. Will we mimic the Assyrians, who weaponized water until their own canals choked them, or the Nabateans, who thrived in the desert by harvesting every drop as sacred? Climate change isn't just melting glaciers, it's holding up a mirror to our priorities. The stones of Angkor and the sands of Petra remind us, civilizations don't collapse because they lack resources. They collapse because they lack wisdom. The water networks of the past aren't just history, they're prophecy. The ghosts of these water networks haunt us with a simple truth: civilizations rise and fall by their mastery of thirst. Whether through engineering, politics, or faith, water shaped history, and it will shape our future. Look around today, and you'll see the same dramas playing out. Las Vegas, a city built on desert sands, pumps water from a shrinking Lake Mead while recycling nearly every drop. Cape Town narrowly avoided Day Zero by rationing water with military precision. And in India's Punjab, ancient stepwells are being revived as modern aquifers collapse from overuse. The parallels are undeniable. We're walking the same tightrope as the Maya, the Nabateans, the Khmer. But here's the twist: we have something they didn't, their ruins as our teachers. The Hohekam's salt-choked fields warn us about unsustainable irrigation. Venice's flexible pilings show the power of adaptation, and Oman's Aflaj channels prove that fairness can outlast empires. The choice isn't just about pipes and pumps, it's about values. Will we treat water as a commodity to be hoarded or a covenant to be shared? The answer will echo in the stones we leave behind. So as you scroll past drought maps or watch another reservoir shrink, remember this: the next chapter of water history is being written now. Will your city be remembered for its foresight or its folly? Hit subscribe to keep unraveling these liquid mysteries and drop a comment below. Which ancient water network left you in awe? The Maya's sacred cenotes, Rome's soaring aqueducts, or Petra's hidden cisterns. Until our next dive into the past, stay curious, stay thirsty, and never stop listening to what the old stones whisper. The future's watching.